company to order. It's one of the many things that you find there. Also, I found on social media an official statement written by the Tanker Drivers Association, or Tanker Owners Union, I should say. It's addressed to the Chief Executive of the National Petroleum Authority. It says, "Dear Sir, influx of Chinese companies into the transportation of petroleum products. We make reference to our letter dated 28th of August on the above subject matter and wish to draw your attention to further developments that confirm our worst fears. The Chinese company in question that has imported a large number of BRVs into the country to undertake transportation of petroleum products is currently carrying out a calibration of their trucks in readiness to commence their intended activities to transport petroleum products in the country. During our compliance workshop at NP on the 14th of September, we gave indications as to the mood among our members regarding this development and of the potential threat to industrial peace. Can you imagine a situation in which a Ghanaian company takes its BRVs to China to transport petroleum products in China, and the authorities in China permit that to happen? We reiterate the fact that our union takes a very strong view of this development, and we will therefore resist any attempt to allow this Chinese company, and for that matter, any foreign company, to enter the haulage sector. The issue is creating fear and panic among our members, and we urge the authority to take action to stop it, in the absence of which there shall be developments that we will all regret." This is sincerely signed by Ignatius Doe, his executive secretary of the Tanker Owners Union, and he will join us very soon via the phone. We have in studio lawyer Kwame Jantoa. He plays within the sector as well. I'm told that he's part of the team that is also interested in not allowing the last chunk to be taken away. And also, we will connect with Andrew Ejapa Mesa. He is a Deputy Minister for Energy. And then John Abdullahi Jinapo is a ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament. He has also said that he is worried about the current happenings. Council, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well.
We're not talking politics today. We're talking energy.
Yes, we're talking jobs for Ghanaians.
Right.
As our president keeps preaching and everybody keeps preaching in this Fourth Republic. But if I may, let's start off from where you finished off.
Right.
And for me, first of all, good morning to our listeners.
Sir.
And
good
morning to
yes,
those watching us online. And for me, the most important thing is, where does the regulator stand? You read a letter that we had written to the regulator, and we have got a response from the regulator. And there are two responses I would like to share with you. And I think it's best you read. So let me hand over my phone to you and then read what the MP wrote in response to our letter.
Okay. Now, this is a letter dated the 25th of September 2023, is on a header of the National Petroleum Authority, and it says, the chairman, Tankers Owners Union, TEMA. "Dear Sir, re-influx of Chinese companies into transportation of petroleum products." Now, your letter dated the 28th of August 2023 and 18th September 2023 on the above subject matter refers. In your said letters, you indicated that a Chinese company that has imported a large number of bulk road vehicles, BRVs, into the country for the transportation of petroleum products. You further indicated that this situation has created uneasiness amongst your members. We wish to inform you that per our records, the authority has not licensed any Chinese transport company. Neither have we licensed any BRVs imported into the country by a Chinese company for the transportation of petroleum products. We refer to the Ministry of Energy's Ghanaian Content and Ghanaian Participation or local content policy on petroleum downstream industry that says the business activity of the transportation of petroleum products is reserved entirely for Ghanaians. That means the ownership of such businesses is supposed to be 100% Ghanaian. We wish to assure you and your membership that the authority does not intend to disregard the Ministry of Energy's Ghanaian content and Ghanaian participation policy and will ensure that no unlicensed entity carries out the transportation of petroleum products in the country. We hope this assurance will ease the fears of your membership and ensure that industrial harmony prevails to enable you carry out your business activities. We thank you for bringing this situation to the authorities' attention, and we will continue to monitor the situation to ensure that the regulations of this industry are duly observed. Signed by Dr. Mustafa Hamid. He is the Chief Executive. It's copied to the Honorable Minister for Energy. And then also the Industries Coordinator Association of Oil Marketing Companies Limited. So this is a response. This assurance from the NPA.
Simultaneously, right? They also wrote a letter to send to you. Read that one too.
Okay. Well, Andrew Japamesa has joined us on the phone line. His Deputy Energy Minister, and I'll read this letter for your benefit, Honorable. Good morning. So this is also dated the 25th of September 2023. One letter that we read earlier is assuring the Tanker Owners Union that nothing of the sort has happened. No vehicle, no BRVs have been registered and have been authorized, and that the local content policy of the Ministry of Energy and the government will be respected in the favor of the Tankers Union. This is also addressed to the Executive Chairman, Central Refinery Limited, Tema. And it says, DSL, loading and transportation of petroleum products. It has come to the attention of the National Petroleum Authority that your company has imported a large number of bulk road vehicles into the country for the transportation of petroleum products. Additionally, we have noticed that the configuration of the loading gantry at your refinery can only accommodate bottom loading instead of top loading or both. This configuration will mean that about 5,000 BRVs, 5,000 BRVs in the country will not be able to load from your gantry. This situation has created uneasiness amongst stakeholders in the petroleum downstream industry. Your entry into the domestic market in view of your refining capacity means that you may be producing approximately 50% of the domestic petroleum products required of this nation. Therefore, disenfranchising existing local players with over 5,000 BRVs will create a very unfair competitive environment in the industry. Section 43.3 of the National Petroleum Authorities Act 691 states that a person shall not gain, hold or secure a monopoly of a business or commercial activity within the petroleum downstream industry. The application of such a loading gallantry, configuration or technology will be in contravention of this act and therefore unacceptable. We refer also to the Ministry of Energy's Ghanaian content and Ghanaian participation as local content policy on petroleum downstream industry that says that the business activity of the transportation of petroleum products is reserved entirely for Ghanaians. That means the ownership of such businesses is supposed to be 100% Ghanaian. Consequently, foreign-owned entities are not allowed to carry out the business activity of transporting petroleum products. We wish to advise that as per the above policy, the authority will not be in the position to license your BRVs to transport petroleum products in the country. If the intention of your company is to transport petroleum products for your loading gallantry, furthermore, the authorities does not intend to disregard the Ministry of Energy's Ghanaian content and Ghanaian participation policy and will ensure that no unlicensed entry carries out the transportation of petroleum products in the country. It says that we hope you will reconfigure your loading gantry to accept all BRVs in the country instead of alienating the majority of existing BRVs to ensure that the industrial harmony prevails. Please be advised accordingly. That's Dr. Mustafa Hamid. He's the Chief Executive. Again, copied to the Honorable Minister of Energy, the Industry Coordinator Association of Oil Marketing Companies, Accra, and the Chairman Tanker Owner Unions in Tema. So this is assuring. Let me welcome John Abdullahi Jinapo. He's the MP for Yabe Kosogu, and then also a ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament, and then Honorable Andrew Japamesa. He is a Deputy Minister for Energy and MP for Sekunde. Gentlemen, welcome on the phone line. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. I shall come to you in a bit. Let me tease from Mr. Kwame Jantoa, who speaks for the Tanker Owners Union. So this is an assurance from the ministry, the MPA. This is also if you like, an advice to send to not to think of playing within the local space. Why are you not happy about this?
Now, we have found out. Cynthia was saying that the trucks have got nothing to do with them. But we found out that they requested for tax exemption for the refinery from for related machinery from through GIPC. And in the list of machinery that they added for tax refinery were the trucks. Now, if the trucks weren't for you, how come you added it to that list for tax exemptions? We hadn't heard from MPA. Yesterday, we had a meeting with MPA, and they have assured us over their dead body that something like this would happen. The CEO has assured us that it won't happen. But then, Johnny, I asked the question. They brought in 300 trucks,
right,
and told customs that it was for temporary importation. So because it was temporary importation, that meant it wasn't meant for this country. It was supposed to move on. How come it was found in this country? How come they were able to bring it in? Now, they needed to register. So they went to customs to see whether it could be registered. And customs told them that they should go and pay the duty before it can be registered. Lo and behold, we then hear that they are calibrating the trucks for to do the transportation. So we asked MPA yesterday,
right,
did you give them the authority to calibrate these trucks? And they said they know nothing about it.
Right, per the letter
yes.
I read as
so
well.
we've told MPA that then go look for that company that calibrated them because it's against the law.
What did they say?
They are going to work on it. The chief executive assured us that he is going to make sure that he gets to the bottom of this.
I see.
Because it is wrong what they're trying to do.
Let me bring in Ejapa this time. Ejapa, so this is an assurance from the NPA on this particular matter. I remember that about 2 days ago, you had also spoken and assured that you will get into it. I want to find out, when you dug into the issues, what did you find?
Let me say good morning to your cherished listeners and my colleague John and my senior brother, Mr. Jantwa. Indeed, when I left your studios on Monday, I indicated that I was going to follow up because of the first time that this matter was coming to my attention was a Sunday evening when the subject for discussion was sent to me. I called NPA and indicated that they have also received a letter from union and they were arranging to meet with them. But clearly, as the law provides, as the regulations clearly state, petroleum downstream is a regulated industry. Okay, and every value chain actor has to be licensed to operate, and there are clear rules regarding areas that are reserved exclusively for indigenous Ghanaians, which includes the haulage and transportation of petroleum products. And so if they look into the matter and indeed the petition was what it was, then they were going to enforce the regulations to ensure that Central does not participate in the petroleum transportation business. And that's exactly what it is that the NPA, the letter that you read from the chief executive after the meeting with the stakeholders have issued. And so I believe that in itself should give us comfort that we will not allow any breaches of the law. Key question then would arise as to how these things came in the first place,
right?
Whether NPA was not aware.
That's right.
And obviously, because you do not need any license to import vehicles, articulated trucks or anything. I believe it's only earth-moving equipment that requires some approval, and even that through the Ministry of Transport, I believe. People import vehicles into the country without necessarily having to obtain license. So we may have to look again at the law to see whether some categories of vehicles, when you are importing them, you need some prior authorization. Okay, because then if it comes in, you may potentially have, the conversation around it, but consistent with our own attitude.
Right.
Down the line, you may see that these things are filtered into the system and they are operating, and and that obviously ought to be avoided. I know that the transport union owners are extremely vigilant because they themselves, the kinds of vehicles that are in the system, they are not able to get sufficient enough jobs to do. Okay, and so they would at all times be vigilant to ensure that the regulator is kept on his feet to ensure that these things do not filter in. But that potential exists.
I see.
So we may have to look at it to see how you block whatever potential loopholes that are within the importation regime to ensure that these things don't come in the first place. Okay, again, Mr. Jantua made the point that some tax exemption request was made. Yes,
that's right. 200 million, 261 million.
But I'm aware that it was not granted. We, the ministry, did not support it because facility itself had been built before the request was made, and Parliament hasn't approved any tax exemption, as far as I know, to warrant any exemptions for these vehicles. And of course, he himself, in his submission, confirmed that the importers said it was for re-export, and it found itself within the system. The question is, did they pay the appropriate taxes? Did the DVLA ensure that these things had been done before they registered the vehicles? Those are questions that really is not within the purview of my ministry. So can't speak to it at this point.
Okay.
But obviously, I can confirm that no tax exemptions have been granted to Refinery.
Okay. Let me bring in JJ. JJ, good morning to you. And the question is, has all of this back and forth come before your committee in Parliament?
Exactly. I've personally had a meeting with officials of Central.
Okay.
Because this issue came to our attention, and I thought that as a ranking member, I needed some clarity. And I made it clear to the chief executive of Central that, look, this will not stand. It flies in the face of our laws. It does not promote local content. It doesn't even ensure that there is coexistence in that industry. Very expensive to buy a tanker. And most of these tanker owners procure these tanker vehicles with loans from the bank. And so when you are hurting them, you are hurting your financial system, you are hurting your economy. I think that we should welcome investors, but those investors should form partnership with our local Ghanaian counterparts so that we can bring about some technology transfer, value addition, and also lift the capacity of the locals. In some countries, you have a refinery, they transport, and they even have distribution outlets. When you do that, you are virtually promoting monopoly, and that will kill the local industry. So on this call, I want to really commend the NPA and to commend the Tanker Drivers Associations for their resilience. It does appear that it's not over yet. All of us have to be very vigilant
and the Ministry of Energy.
And to commend my good friend, Japameka, for the first time. but this is a very serious matter. This is a very, very serious matter. And I think that all of us should put our political differences aside and protect that local industry. Fortunately, in the downstream petroleum sector, it's heavily regulated. Even the pricing for transportation is regulated and predetermined. The pricing for the commodity itself is regulated and predetermined. So Central cannot even just decide that they want to sell their fuel at X price and they want to transport at X price. All that ought to go through regulation and approval at the level of NPA. And so I think that NPA should strengthen its regulatory capacity, especially the inspectorate unit, so that they can keep a close eye on this sector so we can protect the local industry within this sector.
Mr. Jantua, so it looks like we're singing the same song, but is this reassuring enough? We are not out of the woods, as JJ said. Mr. Japamesa says that, look, we have to keep our eyes on the ball so we don't lose track. But is that reassuring enough?
We are singing the same song at this moment. The one thing we should be very mindful of is that the Chinese are always strategic in whatever they do. They have got a refinery. Some of us don't understand why we agreed for a foreign company to come and build a refinery here when our own refinery was limping. We could have done it in such a way that they would invest in our refinery and we do some kind of joint venture to pick our refinery up. So we didn't do that. But there's a strategy here that we see is that they have a refinery.
Right.
They have the raw material in terms of refined petroleum products. They now get the tankers. The next thing you see is that they are getting petrol garages. The moment that happens, they would get their garages, their garages to their trucks to only supply their garages. Look, they started going to the OMCs and telling the OMCs that, look, we can give you a discount in terms of refined petroleum products. And then you would have to agree that it's only our trucks that would come and offload at your petrol garages. Gradually, you will see that they would now take over. And our dear old Goyle would not have legs to stand on. But the most serious part of it all is the capital flight issue. We need dollars in this country, don't we?
That's right. We do.
The cedis that they would earn from selling their refined petroleum products, they would not take cedis back to their country, would they? They would have to change it to dollars. The dollars they'll get from here. They're taking dollars out of the system, which then affects our economy. And we cannot allow that to happen.
But they will pay the right taxes, won't they? That's one thing that,
Can I make a point?
Yes, sorry. Please, go ahead.
You may be right, but don't also forget that without a refinery, it means that you would take cedis, change it to dollars, and import refined petroleum products. In the refinery sector, there are lots of byproducts that you can get. So I think that looking at refining finished products and processing the crude here, looking at the value chain, I think that we should encourage a refinery. But I'm very happy with the point you raised, that what is Ghana benefiting from this refinery in terms of equity? And what is the status of Tor with Central? Looking at their refinery, I've read about their refinery, it's a very, very efficient refinery. And the complexity is very, very high, which means that they can take low products and break it and earn high-end products. So what is the linkage between that refinery and Tor? I think that is where we missed out. However, if we structure it well, I believe that we can make something of it, especially with our own crude. Can't we have an LC standing system such that instead of exporting our raw crude, we can process the crude here, but ensure that payment is prompt. But more importantly, and that is where I am very, very worried and cautious, you might have Ghanaians fronting for some of these entities because you want local content, and I've seen that in the fishing industry, where Ghanaians go to take the license, take these vehicles or vessels, register in their name, meeting the requirement of the law, but behind the veil, they are virtually working for these foreign entities for pittance. I think that is where we ought to be very, very cautious and watch so that people don't beat the system to the disadvantage of this country.
I see.
That is also...
So, Ejapa, I'll bring you in. Let Mr. Janta wants to raise it.
That is also where the regulator should have his eyes peaked on them. We cannot allow fronting, and we should be able to look at the beneficiary ownership issues as we see in our laws. It's very important to protect, Ghanaian businesses. We should make sure that others don't come in and do things that will be detrimental to us. For me, investment is good. But if that investment is going to spoil Ghanaian businesses, then we don't need that investment. It cannot be detrimental to us.
See, Ejapa, come in. So, what considerations were made before this arrangement was agreed to? I think that's the question that's outstanding at this point.
It's a strategic investor who then comes in and obtains license to, as it were, build a refinery. I'm sure you're very much aware that as a country, we have a policy already in place, the petroleum hub development Corporation, which is encouraging the establishment of refineries, tank farms, and petrochemical industries, all that within the Jomoro enclave. Okay, we are a very liberalized economy. We encourage private sector, foreign direct investment, and all that. Of course, it would be good if some arrangement, okay, could be made for Central to look at Thor, okay, because after all, they're doing a certain portion of our import component of our petroleum product. If Thor is able to come on stream, that then increases the volume of petroleum product that is refined in Ghana, and that obviously will lead to a reduction in importation of finished product. And so that is not closed. That conversation can still go on. You cannot compel them. I'm not sure that their license requirements included necessarily they having to take on some Ghanaian entity or state-owned entity as part of their investment strategy. I'm not sure that that's how the system would work. Okay, but if they see some synergies in there, I believe that Mr. Shu himself, the executive chairman of Central, has broached the subject, something that has to be looked at comprehensively to see whether that strategic fit can happen. Okay, but that said, we are all agreed that Ghanaian businesses, Ghanaian jobs ought to be protected.
That's right.
And the assurance that I want to give to our listeners who are operating within the downstream petroleum sector. Indeed, Mr. Gento, I'm sure you're very much aware that even distribution of petroleum itself, okay, per our new regulation, is one that has been reserved exclusively for Ghanaians. And so we had conversations with the Shells and the Mobiles of this world on how they transition, okay, such that some offloading of Ghanaian interest, into their operations are done. And that conversation is still ongoing. We need to fashion, because they've been in the system for so long. You cannot say that you are expropriating their investment. But if the law is that going forward, only Ghanaian citizens ought to operate within that space, then you have to find a way to ensure that the investment that they've made is not lost, and that some transition arrangement is put in place. And we're making significant progress in that regard, okay? And so we are not losing sight of the need to protect Ghanaians, albeit the fact that we still need foreign investment to facilitate our economic growth. Okay, and that said, I can assure.
Japa, do you talk to these key stakeholders? Because I'm sure
that
if you did, they would have raised these concerns.
Mr.
Right.
Ajimendia, who is I believe the chief executive of the Oil Marketing Association,
right,
is very much aware of these conversations. We engage with all the keyboard, all of them. Tanker Drivers Union, we engage with them. Of course, yesterday MPA had a meeting with them on this specific matter. And MPA confirmed that they haven't licensed or given any permit to the Central people to operate any transport business in Ghana. Like JJ said, the regulated industry, fully regulated all the way from the refinery head to the filling station. Okay, and so it's not as if to say some structure, permit me, that you can just buy a vehicle and put it out there on the street and start running. No, you need to go through a permitting process. They need to fix some monitoring equipment on it and all that before you can operate within the space. And if NPA is clear that these are reserved for not only local content, because the local content rules, we realize, in itself is subject to abuse, in the sense that by virtue of you incorporating a company in Ghana, for example, that company then becomes Ghanaian. And so, by definition, that is a local company, and so can participate in the sector regardless of its shareholding status, right? Because of that, we've expanded it and said that, look, it's Ghanaian content, Ghanaian participation, to make it specific to indigenous Ghanaians. Okay, and so we're looking at ways to ensure that people do not front for foreign interest and all that within our regulation. Then it's not an event, it's a process, we're working on it. But I can assure that we're not going to keep our eye off the ball. We're going to ensure that these guys do not operate to the disadvantage of Ghanaians within the college space. That assurance, I can be categorical about it.
Okay.
And we all have to work together as key stakeholders to ensure that the regulator is able to perform its functions to the satisfaction of all.
Great.
Johnny, it looks like...
That's a Japan.
Yes, sorry. Japan, my good friend and my schoolmate. It looks as if the Centio MD does not respect our laws. Let me give you an example.
Tell me.
When they were constructing the refinery, they did not have a permit, nor did they have a license. It took the MD of MPA to go and stop him.
Yes.
To go and stop him. Does he have respect for us?
But why would
these
he do
trucks,
that in the first place?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So my understanding is that they were under the impression, and of course it was wrong, and that's why they were stopped.
Were they penalized for it? Were they penalized for it, Bobo?
Well, I wouldn't be in a position to tell at this point, but if you breach the rules, there are sanctions that necessarily ought to follow, and I would expect the MPA to apply that.
Make it snappy so that we can go to JJ as well.
I'm saying that my understanding is that they were under the impression, of course, it could be deceptive, that environmental permits and all that were what were required for them to start construction. Okay, but it was brought to their notice that look, we needed an MPA permit specific to set up a refinery, and so they've gone through that process, and that's why.
I see.
Because only last month, okay, they were looking to even commission. The MPA stopped them, okay, because they hadn't gone through all the regulatory processes before certification to commence operations before you can actually.
But the Japan one would have thought that before you come to play within the space, you must first of all understand the space within which you're playing, and you might have had some transaction advisors who might have told you what is there in the space.
We are on the same page.
Right.
Okay, we are on the same page. I'm saying that that's what they claimed, and obviously that claim, from what I said, could be deceptive. That they thought they could just, squeeze their way through the system without, but they ought to know that the Ghanaian regulation space is something that they cannot toy with. And so post that, my understanding, complying with the MPA demands and
I hear you. Thank you.
And Johnny, we should hold responsible those Ghanaians who are fronting. We should hold them responsible because they are not telling foreigners the law.
Ghanaians, we only have rights. We forget our responsibility. In all shapes of Ghanaian endeavor, it's only the right that we all always clamor for.
I hear you.
But our responsibilities is of no consequence to us.
I hear you.
It's not only within the petroleum space. They just cited an example of the fishing industry. Go to my own secondary fishing harbor and go and see the Chinese vessels that are there. But I'm sure when you go to the Register General, you won't see a Chinese name on any of the documents.
I see.
So what are we doing to ourselves as a people?
Well,
but of course, the politician will always be at the receiving end. That they fix it. As if to say somebody has a magic wand. It's a collective responsibility. And so, yes, I agree with you entirely. And our media friends should also, while they draw some home the right, to also let Ghanaians know that, look, we owe a responsibility to our country to also do the right things so that we can hold our government accountable when they fall short.
And I think that those who also hold power must also ensure that those who are paid to do the work open their eyes and not sleep on the job. Fair comment?
It's all part of the collective, isn't it?
Right.
Well, how can you bring trucks in here and do pay duty? How?
JJ, step in for me. So Mr. Japa is still skeptical that all of it. I mean, I'm listening to the conversations.
There's a problem somewhere. There's a problem. The central refinery is the top-up loading system. All the Ghanaian tanker trucks are bottom up. The central is bottom up. The Ghanaian tankers are configured such that they are top down. So right from the beginning, the configuration of the refinery doesn't even suit our tankers. And I'm asking myself, who granted that permit? Knowing that the two systems cannot work together. Something must be wrong somewhere. And that for me is very, very important too. For a country like Ghana, why would you locate two refineries so close to each other when the government itself says that its policy is to establish a refinery in Jomoro, where they have spent so much money to establish what they call a petroleum hub? Why they chose that location is proximity with the oil fields and a different location aside Tema because of security issues. So who granted them that permission to site the refinery so close to Tema Oil Refinery? These are issues that I think today we are dealing with tanker drivers. So I thought I shouldn't get too deep into these areas.
But it's a fine thing to talk about because all involved, I mean, it's a value chain that we're trying to look at. So.
Absolutely. And then why would a Chinese company just sit and think that we can bring about 300 tankers in this country? I mean, then they must be very daring or they must have some assurance somewhere. Because the cost of one tanker is so expensive. Now the vehicles are in Ghana. What happened? Are you going to tell them to reshift them? And so we are all growing as a country. And we are learning.
We should be aware. They brought it in as a temporary import, meaning that they wouldn't have to pay duty on it. So how come it got into the system?
But are they already on the road?
Saying. Yeah, they have. It's on the road. They've marked it.
No, but
I have pictures of it.
Government,
they haven't started using it, but it's on the road. It's here.
JJ is making a point. Go ahead.
Government, and you said that you are temporarily importing over 200 tankers. My first question is to do what? Temporarily importing 200 tankers to Ghana. I mean, you raise an eyebrow.
It's actually 300.
300.
No, I'm saying over 2. So let's 300. 300 tankers in Ghana.
They gave me 100 to raise red flag.
Exactly.
I agree
to
with
do
you
what?
100%.
So look, it does appear that from what I'm seeing, the resilience of the tanker drivers is beginning to pay. And as Parliament, especially on the minority side, we shall keep an eagle eye and a keen eye.
I thought we had shelved the politicking and we're talking.
Oh, but we're not talking politics. I'm saying Parliament. But you remember of Parliament?
The minority side. So this should be.
I speak for the minority.
No, you on this occasion speak for all of us.
Okay, all of us in Parliament. All of us in Parliament. The representative of the people. Yes, we would have to follow this keenly. But ultimately, I think that since you must have an understanding that, look, in as much as you want to do business in Ghana, don't kill our local industry. I mean, that for me is very, very important. And I think that is where all of us, our focus and attention should be directed
I agree with you, but it cannot be one that is based on moral wishes. It has to be enforced. The rules and regulations of our country ought to be enforced to ensure that they are prevented from participating in areas that are reserved exclusively for Ghanaians. I mean, and I know that speaking for my minister, that is something that we will not compromise as a Ministry of Energy.
I see. Great. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Janto, you have any closing thoughts for them? Because you will be here to do the final wrap-up, but you have any close-up?
Well, government, they are Parliament, they represent us. And we would want a situation where they have an eagle's eye on companies that come in and want to do business here, and it doesn't become detrimental to the Ghanaian. Centium aren't only doing refinery. They are doing ceramics. They are doing other things in this country. They've been here for nearly 6-7 years. So it isn't something that they would feign that they don't know the system. They are doing business here already. So why would they bring in BRVs? Why would they come for a refinery and the authorities don't know? No. So we need to open our eye to make sure that these things don't happen where it becomes detrimental to Ghana. But most of all, the capital flight issue, for me, is where it affects directly our economy and affects you and I. Because the money that they make, goes into their banks. It doesn't stay in our banks. So we should have situations where we make sure that Ghanaians have the high heights in some of these things, so that the money we make stays in our banks and we can use it to develop our nation. For me, that's important.
That's important. Ejapa, I'll give you your closing thoughts. So Mr. Janto has raised a question about the dollarization that could affect us. He's also raised concerns about cracking the whip and keeping an eye on the ball. But most importantly, the protection of jobs for young people.
I thought that the issue on the capital flight was addressed by JT earlier. Okay, because it's a two-way street. You either import crude, or even if you were refining our own crude, the crude doesn't belong to us necessarily. We only have a share of it. Okay, and so whoever the owners are, which are the upstream investors, ought to be paid.
Sorry, there's a difference there. The difference being that they are refining here. So if they refine, let's say 200,000 barrels, what we bring in might not be 200,000 barrels. So the amount of money that they will take out is more than the amount of money we used to import. That is why for some of us, we should get to working.
The value chain related product, okay, that and the job creation and all that is also attendant to that.
Are we committed to getting Tema Oil Refinery to work again, Ejapa Mensah? Are we committed to do that?
That commitment is there. Okay, I'm sure you are very much aware of the issues that arose with respect to Forenco transaction. Okay,
right.
It's been referred to the appropriate agency to look at it, because it turned out that what top management had in mind of private, PPA, wasn't what the rules allowed them to do. And that this clearly was a PPP transaction, and so it has to go to the PPP secretariat for them to look at it, and that's ongoing. Okay, and so yes, that commitment to revamp so that we can do away, if possible, or at least minimize the importation of petroleum products is achieved. Okay, so that's being done. But I agree on the regulation side. And I'm glad that the MPA responded swiftly and positively to this concern that was raised. Yes, they need some strengthening, because you need to be able to proactively deal with some of those issues that come up. Okay, the question then is, can you have ice everywhere? People ought to then bring it to your notice, because with respect to this NTO thing, it started before the MPA got to know that, hey, some refinery was being built in Tema. Of course, we have some smaller ones, Patton and Nakwaba, okay, which have all been licensed to operate within the same Tema enclave. And so, JJ is not afraid to say why NTO in Tema when the policy, of course, the investor has several considerations that would inform where he sites his business. Okay, we are encouraging refineries to be sited in the petroleum hub enclave. But if somebody feels that, look, I have land in Tema, it's an industrial land, I have MPA approval that is fit for purpose, you can't compel that person necessarily to go to tomorrow. You can say that, look, you are not licensing any more refineries to be sited in Tema. And that's some regulatory measure that you can put in place. But that's what's under the bridge now. Okay, going forward, what it is that we can do to ensure that not infiltrate the spaces that are reserved for exclusively Ghanaians. And I believe that we as a ministry, with MPA as our agency, would commit to ensuring that they do not invade the space that...
Ejapa, here's a point.
We can have the conversation on other matters, subsequently.
Ejapa, here's a point of interest, and then we'll wrap up with you on that one in just a minute. The Chinese in tanker driving. What is the ministry's view about this? Is Chinese people driving? Chinese driving tankers. Is it local content too?
I don't know whether driving is also reserved for indigenous Ghanaians. I have to look into it. I mean, on the lighter side. But of course, these are Chinese brothers. The kinds of things and the kinds of places that they are in this country, you have no clue. I mean, drive in the western region down this area, and you see them, I think they've lived here all their life. You know, but of course, we need to strengthen our immigration rules and all that, enforcing our laws, because we have all the laws, we have all the rules. Most times, it's the enforcement that becomes a problem. Okay, and if it's an area that non-Ghanaian nationals are precluded from participating in, we need to get our agencies to work to ensure that these things just do not happen.
Okay, thank you.
And quickly make a point before my good friend Ejapa goes. Look, we have to, as in a country, look at this Chinese influx. They are everywhere. They are in our shops. They are in our markets. They actually help invest in some of these young gentlemen who push.
There's the trolleys.
The trolleys.
So they bring the
They
things
even
in.
bring their people in. Foreigners in.
So what I've learned is that they bring the things in at wholesale price. Then you, the retailers, will go to them and buy at retail price, pay GRA, local authority, all those fees and charges that you have to pay. And then they bring in these guys, recruit them and give them the trolleys, and they roam the streets and sell them at a way cheaper price. So your stuff that you bought from them will be in your shops. Nobody is coming to buy them because they're expensive. What they profiteer off this one, and also the wholesale.
John, it's a national issue we need to look at. We cannot go to China and do those types of things in China. We cannot. Say because we're a liberal society, we open up for all these things to happen.
Okay.
We've got to look at the Chinese issue in Ghana today.
JJ, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah. Japan brought this issue of toll. I didn't want to get there because on Tuesday I'll be doing a formal press engagement on Central. And we have serious issues with the structure of this toll arrangement. And so just to send signal to my good friend Japan.
Give us a sneak peek. JJ.
Yes, I've just gotten a copy of the letter signed by William Owureku, the Deputy Minister, granting no objection and asking that the RFCC and the CDU should be added to it. I've taken a look at the content. I'm getting another document at 11, but I'm sure, based on what I have so far, that agreement would not inure to the benefit of this country. But like I said, next week we shall do a formal engagement, and then we shall make the details known to you.
I'm grateful for your time. MP for Yape Kasogu is also a ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament. JJ Jinapo.
For one press conference a week.
He's gone. Andrew Ejapamesa is Deputy Minister for Energy, is also the MP for Sekunde, and he is joined us this morning to spend his morning. We're grateful, Council.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Lajanto, you have the final bite on all of this. So assurances have come. You have agreed in principle with Ejapamesa, who has agreed with you, but he says we'll have to look at it and look at the policy issues again. JJ is not happy that we cited a refinery closer to our own refinery, which is not altogether functional, and all the other issues that have been raised. What are your closing thoughts? Are you, first of all, assured as Tanker Owners Union that things will change going forward?
We hope the way we've started would be able to continue it, but we don't trust Centio. We don't trust Centio. So we are still going to make sure that we monitor the situation. And all of us should monitor the situation going forward. Ghanaians can't lose their jobs because a foreign company has the wherewithal to bring a certain amount of investment in to take over our jobs. I think that should be something we should be very mindful and careful about. The question about toll is important. It has taken too long. We are an oil producing country. We can use certain percentages of our oil for toll. Let's sort toll out. Because if for nothing at all, it breeds competition, doesn't it? If there is a private refinery here and ours too is working, it breeds competition. But remember, refined petroleum products does not only sit in Ghana or supply only Ghana. The landlocked countries also come down to buy refined petroleum products from our refinery. They're buying it from TOR. TOR can make money that way and bring in foreign exchange for themselves to pick the refinery up. And so for us in the union, we will be monitoring. we would make sure that our transport owners, our drivers, those who are part and parcel of maintaining these BRVs would not be put asunder, but would make sure that work continuously flows for them. Look, at this present moment, we have nearly over 2,000-3,000 tankers just idle. Why? Because we do not have enough to be able to service these tankers. If for nothing at all, we should be doing nearly 5 droppings. Every tanker should be doing at least 5 droppings a month.
So we're getting to a point where a tanker could be then work for just once a month?
Yes, some of us work once a month.
Wow.
Some of us get loads only once a month.
Once a month?
Yes, once a month.
So how do you survive?
That's the $1 million question. You've got to survive. And hence, when we heard this, we got quite, infuriated that it can't happen and it should not happen. And so government should work with, the tanker union. The government should make sure that they invite the tanker union as part and parcel of some of the things that they want to do, so that there is that relationship. I know the Minister of Energy is keen to hear some of the issues that come up where downstream is concerned, but it should be across board so that we are all satisfied that nobody tries to usurp areas that are meant for Ghanaians. It's our country, isn't it?
It is.
It's our country.
It is our country. And again, the final point I want to raise on this one is you have said enough, but how are you people keeping body and soul together in the midst of all of this?
It is not an easy thing, Johnny. It is not an easy thing. You've got to make sure that you cut expenditure in some of the things you do. You've got to make sure that your tankers are still maintained to a certain degree. And maybe somebody will say, okay, you're not doing much, so you've parked some of your tankers which are not working, so you can handle that maintenance. There's not much maintenance on those tankers. But we did not come into this business getting loans from banks to buy tankers to sit idle. We came in to work. So we need to work.
Thank you. Lawyer Kwame Janto, as always, a pleasure. And I hope that the ears have heard and action will be taken. We're grateful that you could join us. Thank you so much indeed, Andre Japamesa, and also John Abdullah Jinapo for joining us on this conversation. You can always share your thoughts and comments. After this break, Alan John Kojo Tremanting, who has broken away from the NPP to form his own movement, will join us in a bit. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Usika seme nkoyi ana quick credit siasia se sika pe en